Welcome to WP-Tonic, Episode 8. We're back here with WP-Tonic. We just did a nice timelinesofsuccess.com interview, but this is really the nuts and bolts we're going to get into. It's our weekly show with Jonathan, all about WordPress and that type of work. It's mostly WordPress, but it's actually how WordPress hooks into the business community and how you can apply WordPress too. So I'm really looking forward to listening to both you and Jonathan, and I will step back and let you guys go at it.
All right then, it's my great joy to introduce to the audience, it's Spencer Forman, the evil genius. So how you doing, Spencer?
Hello, it's Spence. I know you wanted me to say that. Good morning.
Oh, you cut me up, Spence. So Spence, your present online business, you've gone into web design training and you're big into WordPress. And I get your your daily email and its video, and it's always entertaining. So I thought I'd have you on the show because you're on the sharp end of training, of dealing with freelancers. And I thought, to start off the interview, what do you think are a couple of the basic challenges and the biggest mistakes that a lot of freelancers, people trying to make a living out of WordPress and web design make?
The biggest mistakes or the three biggest mistakes?
A couple.
Okay. I think number one is not having a focus on where you want to go at the end. It's the shiny ball syndrome. As an entrepreneur, and we were just talking with Bill about this, the idea is that many people come in and are just captivated with how much is possible once you start using WordPress and all the accessory plugins and the themes and add-ons. It's literally the most wonderful toy store in the world. But if you don't understand what your end goal is, you could be one of those people that just spends endless amount of hours tinkering. And yet the most money-making opportunity you have could be right in front of you with just a few simple tools. So number one is understanding where you want to go. And another mistake I see is that people are afraid of learning the effective basics of WordPress under the hood. And yet, ironically, and that's one of the reasons we've had such good luck teaching, once you learn some basic mechanical stuff, you can really accomplish a lot, almost as much as a professional developer would, because WordPress already has invented many of the components. I use the metaphor of Lego blocks. I have a 3-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 13-year-old, and basically they all use Legos, but the 3-year-old uses the big ones, and the 13-year-old does, Mindstorm computer robots. The guys at the mall do these 8-foot snowmen at Christmas, and if you're using WordPress, you could be starting out with like the 3-year-old level, the big blocks, or you could go all the way up to building 8-foot snowmen. It's just understanding under the hood how to make that happen. And anyway, long answer, but people get intimidated to say, hey, I don't know PHP, I don't know CSS, I don't know how to develop. It's not necessary.
I agree with you to some extent, and some extent I don't agree with you. It's a balance. What I like about you is that you've got a very positive, but you're very down-to-earth attitude. And I know a lot of people in the WordPress community, and one of the great things about the WordPress development community and the WordCamps, and I help run Reno, the WordPress Reno meetup, it's a great community, but there are a group of I call snobbish programmers that your only worth is your technical ability with PHP, and I never got into web design development to become a top-end PHP engineer. I got in because I like design and I like business. So they don't quite know what to make of me, Spence, sometimes.
Hey, Spencer, this is Bill, too. I'm listening in. If ever you need me to slap Jonathan, just yell and I'll slap him for you.
Well, I mean, he really brings up a good point, which is I think we actually are on the same page about that, because one of the fundamentals I teach is that I came into the WordPress world not as a developer. I had a technical partner at the time, and I was really always limited because he had to code things independently on that outside platform. And even with a framework like Symfony and other things, it was always one arm's length outside of my reach. And so when we came into WordPress and I had to do things from scratch, I was forced into a situation of learning what's really the core stuff that is important to get the goal accomplished. And in doing that, I realized the 80-20 rule kicks in. You can accomplish 80% of the value of what you want to sell or what you want to do in WordPress with 20% of the knowledge. And that's how we teach it at 1WTV now, is that we don't tell people you have to go through a year course and learn all this stuff in order to make your first dollar. We say, we're going to show you 5 low-hanging pain points that people in WordPress are experiencing today and their potential clients, and how to fix those and solve those, even if you've never done anything technical before.
Yeah, I do like your approach because I've actually been on some of your webinars on Friday, and they are very good, Spence. My audience for WP-Tonic is the kind of small business, medium owner that's knocking up a few WordPress sites themselves, the kind of lower medium end web designer, developer, the kind of graphic designer that's getting into WordPress. That's what I see my audience being. So I thought you'd be a very good guest. But I have a duality about WordPress. I got to admit it, Spencer. I love it, but also I think it's totally commoditized web design. And I had one major client 2 months ago who in the end I had to sack, Spencer. I had to politely find them somebody, because they kept turning around to me in this enormously complex membership e-commerce website, and they kept saying to me, "But Jonathan, it's only WordPress." And in the end, I just wanted to headbutt them, Spencer. So what's your feelings about WordPress? You know, is it a duality? Is it a blessing but also a curse at the same breath?
I really agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'll put my own spin on it because I use the word democratization. Technology, which I love, has made it possible for people to do things without the barrier of either a degree or the barrier of expensive hardware. And I was explaining with Bill about how, being a video fan, that's how I got into doing software stuff, that I wanted to do more with sharing my online trike flying videos. And at the time, to make a trike flying video required very expensive equipment, and HD was amazingly expensive and complicated. Once that all changed, all of a sudden, it's very hard for videographers or photographers to justify to their client why they're going to charge them tens of thousands of dollars when, cousin Billy has got an iPhone and he can post it up onto YouTube at the end of the wedding for free. And that's similar democratization happening with WordPress, where if your client is of the mindset that you're basically working as a wage slave for them, then the solution is actually very similar to what you said. Is we'd say fire them or leave them, you say sack them. It's the same result. You can't compete with a client's mentality that believes you're doing nothing of value. And just like a photographer today can't compete with a person that thinks, hey, take some pictures, give me the thumb drive and be done with you. You have to go about figuring out, well, what can I do that represents the real value of my particular talent? And yet the clients can see that and can't or have no reason to think about going around it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. But my own spin on it, it's not the size of client. There's a lot of talk, you got to work your way up the feed chain and you end up with bigger, large corporate clients or medium-sized clients. But the problem is with that is you can end up with projects that go on forever, and they don't like paying you that quick either. And you just want to get the thing done because it's totally taken over your life. But I don't think it's size of client. I think it's attitude. If the client sees what you're doing as just an expense, I think you've got a problem. If they see what you're doing with them as an investment, it's a totally different attitude. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I don't do any corporate work, so I am definitely of the mindset that my clients as a freelancer and what I teach my clients as students, I should say, at 1WDTV is to find individuals, because there are those who do well doing B2C, but for me, B2B. For my mindset, you're better off finding newbies on WordPress that are entrepreneurs or just getting started with their own website for some maybe business motive. And the reason is that they don't know enough to be dangerous, and they're not spending other people's money, they're spending their own. Because ultimately what you're selling them is a relationship with you being their trusted resource. It really has nothing to do with what you're using to deliver the solution. And your earlier example about a person who was enough of a wise guy to say to you, well, WordPress is just open source software. That's the first hint to you that you should not waste any more time on that person. Because like in dating, if you were to meet somebody very nice at a social event or a bar and you wanted to have a relationship with you, if the first thing they said to you was something off-puttish like, you're blonde hair and you wear patent leather shoes, I can't really ever be with you. That's a warning sign that, or better yet, like if they're very naughty with the waiter or very rude, that's how they're going to be treating you down the road. And in the same way, a client that doesn't value what their pain solution is worth that you can deliver or having you at their service, there's no point in going on, because it's always going to be that struggle. So picking and choosing is a big part of success with any freelancer, and especially with WordPress. Ironically, in my case, I turn the open source on its head and use it as a sales advantage, because coming from a platform that was closed in the early days, we had 6,000 to 8,000 customers that were left out in the cold when that platform decided to shut them and us off.
I think that's a really powerful, that's one of the reasons why I asked you on this show, Spence, is that I think what you've just said is a warning and a powerful metaphor, because there's a number of private, that now VC powered, financed. I won't name them. There's about 3 to 4 that provide a wiki whiz, and they provide the whole platform and the hosting, and they allow you to build reasonably, well, not truly complicated, but I cringe when people say that they're utilising them based on your own experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, is that I'm very outspoken, and I'm on record for all of this stuff back in the day. It was in 2006 and 7 and 8, but really in 8. But WordPress as a sales advantage, you can very simply say to them, look, my whole goal is to be a resource to solve your problems, but I'm delivering you something that A, doesn't require you to find me in the future and look through my spaghetti code. B, you can have tens of thousands of people, anyone in any country of the world, help you in the future. And C, we're building with Lego blocks, which means that you yourself may one day decide to get a little more active, but even if you don't, it's simple enough for you to know what you want to snap in and snap out, because these are predefined things. And that's so different than somebody who builds a custom solution using Ruby on Rails or, Symfony framework or anything else. Those are really reliant upon the developer and their architecture. WordPress is not. And that means that you're being really honest with somebody in a way that I think raises the trust and lowers the barrier, as compared with somebody who says, I'm a wedding photographer and my pictures are so awesome because look at the pixelation inside of the raw file. Somebody's going to look at you like, what? But if you say to them, hey, I'm going to be the best photographer because I'm going to hand you over all of your wedding pictures on a thumb drive, and it's a great deal, it's a great price, but what I'm really about is if you ever have any other family stuff, call me on short notice. Here's my personal phone number. You can reach me on Sunday nights. And, if you have a friend, I'll give you a freebie. In other words, you're selling the fact that the tools are no longer the issue. And you're selling the relationship, just like, well, why do you go back to the same person to cut your hair or clean your teeth or, have a burrito made for you? It's because you know and trust and rely on that person himself or herself, not because, the dentist tools are so much better.
Yeah, you're one of the few individuals that tries to calm the madness to some extent. Because one of the other things...
fan the flames, actually.
Well, no, you do. You try and... because as a freelancer, you're supposed to be really good at Photoshop. You're supposed to be a top graphic designer. You're supposed to be a top person in jQuery. You're supposed to be a top coder in PHP. You're supposed to know SEO. You're supposed to know social media. You're supposed to know online marketing. And you're supposed to be a business consultant and also a psychotherapist, all rolled up in one, aren't you? And then you have the WordPress and web design media, Smashing Magazine, and they're very agency orientated. So it's all about a website that costs from 50 to 100,000 and probably took half a year to do is the example that everybody should do. And you get a client that shows you a site that cost over 50,000. They say, well, can you do that for 1,000? So you're one of the few individuals that I think tries to bring this down to earth again. So do you think I've been a bit jaded, or do you think there's some element of truth in what I've just stated?
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but that's the point, is that I've witnessed in my 48 years at least one or two occasions where you see something becoming a verb, and before you know it, it's a verb. And I mean a verb in popular culture. So in contemporary times, for example, text messaging, right? That was something that happened, maybe that's the granddaddy of recent verbs. But there was a time when you would say, I'll call you. And then people would say, I'll send you a text. And most people would look at you, what does that mean? I don't even have a thing that'll let me get what you're going to do to me. But now, who doesn't know? Your grandmother knows if she's alive. I'm going to text you, Grandma. All right. Same thing with, I want to find out. I'll Google you, right? Or I'll send a tweet. I'll poke you on Facebook. Well, with WordPress, the tools and such are that there's a wave that is coming where mainstream people will understand the requirement of themselves to have their presence online organized, whether it be their personal name or their business or whatever, because if they don't, then everybody around them has the advantage that they are missing. And at that point, it's not so important that the tools are unique. It's important that they've got access to somebody in their neighborhood. So with WordPress being, I think, almost 30% of all websites on the internet, I feel very strongly it is the ubiquitous solution that every single person will know of. And whatever the verb may be, it will be something like, what's your something online? And that will be a solution based on WordPress. In our case, for example, we're really seeing success now with Video Membership Kit, which is, we sell at videomembershipkit.com. That's a prepackaged solution for freelance web designers to go out to anybody who has content that they sell now personally and put it online, like yoga instructors, for example. And that's the thing. They know they can make money in their yoga studio, but they just don't know yet what the verb is to describe, well, I can have my classes selling at night to people that can't come into the studio or to friends of theirs that don't even live in the neighborhood. How do I do that? What's the name of it? Who do I search for to make that happen? Just like a couple, years ago when he said, I'm going to tweet you something, it didn't mean anything.
Jonathan, I want to break in for a second. Hey, Spence, I really liked what you said about WordPress being sort of that next evolution. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I've mentioned it a couple times. I don't think people grasp what I'm trying to say. But you know how Facebook is sort of
That's
like...
not surprising, Bill.
See, I think too deep and too far ahead. I'm going to slap him. Wait a second. I just slapped him.
You guys are like Jason and Jonathan over at texting.
I love to slap him once in a while.
I've been wanting to slap him for a long time, Spencer.
Yeah, anyway, going back to the conversation. But I do believe that WordPress could be something like, now don't get this confused, but something like Facebook.
Into your part
wait a second, wait a second. Facebook, because you just said it, you can organize your systems and processes, and you can make WordPress whatever you want to make it. The problem is there's like you said earlier, there's a lot of plugins. One plugin can destroy your site, and you have to understand how to use it, work it. It's getting easier. I mean, even I can use WordPress to some extent. But could you go into more detail of how that transition's going to occur where more and more people will start using WordPress to manage their own little niche and area. And then that's on the personal side. And the next level is where you are, which is the business side, which is a small micro entrepreneur type business with a photographer or whoever it might be. It could be a painting company. So could you go more into detail there? Now I'll butt out. That's the last conversation I'll butt into until the end when we summarize everything up.
Well, I'm absolutely happy to do this. And by the way, I know I can say pause. If I have to pause, it's only because I'm enjoying the conversation, but I have a guy who's going to be coming maybe in a minute to start installing some glass in my office. So if that happens, I'll pause so that we don't have a noise interruption.
Yeah, sure.
The actual answer, though, is that I think that what's happened is you've got marketplace situations that occur due to technological advances and due to mainstream culture exposing normal people to something that becomes a verb.
Spencer, could you put that in?
Okay, let me simplify that.
Could you put that into English, Spencer?
I understood what he said.
In other words, you have a situation where until your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa know what something is, it's still a little cutting edge. And then one day it becomes something that everybody and their grandma knows about. And in the process of that happening, there's a requirement for people to start building accessories to simplify how those things work. So for example, we were talking about texting, right? So first you needed people to have phones that could text, and then they tried to, kill everybody. They still do, like how much it costs to send a text, which was ridiculous and still is. Then it became a selling point for phone companies and for service providers to say, well, texts are free or unlimited texting. At some point, everybody and their grandma had a phone with unlimited text. That's the transition point where you say, aha, now what can be done here since everybody now has a device and has unlimited texting? And in the same way, WordPress is like the undeniable leader, but maybe soon will be the undeniable winner of who is the CMS of choice for anybody who wants an online presence. And you can argue Joomla and Drupal till you're blue in the face, but ironically, unless you're on a WordPress site, you really don't know the joy of how much can be done. When that war is over, it's kind of like Betamax and VHS. When the war is over, now all of the decisions that you can make as the end user of the site, or all of the decisions you can make as a person who provides something to that ecosystem, are easy.
Yeah, I think to get a bit techie though, I think it was with version 3.0 and 3.1 when custom post types were introduced, and also I think before that, I think it was 2.9 when they sorted out the menu system. I think it was Woo Themes that first did it, and then and also the widgetization. The wizardization system as well. I think these areas, when they were sorted out, that's when WordPress really started to build momentum. But one thing I wanted to ask you, what's your, I think another area, especially with freelancers, and is that, there is a tendency to go to Theme Forest, get a theme. I've done it. And I think what you try and put forward is you provide some basic themes in your course, or you suggest that you have a basic kind of toolkit of themes that the quality of the code and you're used to manipulating. So I actually think that's a better approach. So what I was going to ask you, what's your feeling around frameworks like Genesis and other similar frameworks? What's your position on those and that?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started doing the WordPress solution stuff after coming from a closed platform, I started working with a lot of the Woo themes, which I still enjoy, and elegant themes and such. And I had literally child themes and other solutions across maybe 20, 30, 40 different varieties. And it was kind of like selling Dell laptops versus selling Apple laptops. What I realized is that it's very difficult to have continuity in what you teach people if, in addition to WordPress versions changing in the videos, that you have each and every video with a different potential theme or framework. So simple answer is I'm agnostic as far as people choosing to use this framework or another framework. But in general, I do have strong feelings that I think that people should learn the concepts of basic WordPress theming and architecture. And I'm not talking about, well, this is an esoteric question, but there's two different types of philosophies. There's the real way, and then there's the custom way. The real way is what most of WordPress themes use, and what I think the intention was, is that you use a parent theme, child themes, and you use markup changes in the child theme to instigate most of your design work. The alternate way, which was, in my opinion, started by Chris Pearson over at Thesis, was to use functions to modify the core markup. And
I'm going to vomit now, Spencer.
Yeah, well, and Genesis is a spin-off of that. Now, I have no problems with Genesis, and I love what they're doing. And, you know, it's a Chicago-based company, too. But when I go to teach people, this is Betamax VHS. I teach people how to do functions and how to create modifications with functions. But as a design philosophy, I find it very difficult to really justify that for especially a beginner designer or even an advanced one, that it's not more simple and more obvious to just say, hey, put the structural changes into the child theme templates, and then you can see patently obvious, just looking at the directory structure, what you've modified.
Oh, then, I'm so happy you've said this, Spencer, because it's nice to have, you know, I totally agree with it. And
I'm going to have to take Brian Gardner out for coffee, you know, now, because he's around the neighborhood from me, but I'll have to take him out for coffee. But they've done a very good job compared to, I think, let's say where Thesis is today. Genesis has evolved with the community and become a very strong and friendly force for that technique. It's not to put down anything to do with Thesis. It's amazing, but it's positioned itself as a sort of elite high-tech solution, whereas Genesis is more of a everyday person solution using that technique. Yet the technique itself, in my strong opinion, is not as easy or as accessible as just, hey, why can't we stick with doing it the way every single other WordPress theme does it, which is, you know, child theme.
Well, I really like Genesis in a way, but I've just refused to go down that route because of the things you've just expressed. And I really like Studio Press, and I like the owner, and I like the company, and I think it's a very reputable company, and I wish them well. But I just, for the things you expressed, it's the reason why I've been looking at Foundation, because I need to speed up my responsive design output. So I've been looking at Foundation. But the other thing, another quick question, what's your position on SAS and NAS? Because I just want to quickly say what my position is. I think they're really great technologies, and if you're really dealing with a massive corporate website or a truly custom enormous e-commerce site, a big project, less or SAS probably helps. But I think it gained popularity and it increases complexion because it became a trend. Some of the big hitters in the web design industry started using it, and everybody thought they had to pull in. Do you think there's any truth in what I'm saying?
I do, but it's a funny thing because I was reading an article from Medium today that the Buffer web designer was talking about things he's doing to optimize Buffer. Now, you know, Buffer has, I think, a $3.5–4 million run rate a year. So when he's saying this, he's not just sort of one of these tinkering in my garage guys. He's got a legitimate business that he's trying to save 10 kilobytes of CSS is a big deal when you're optimizing a site for that many people to use. But what I find is that a lot of people get really turned on by, I call it jargon porn, with all these new services and techniques. And hey, I used lint and I sent it through Grunt
and then that.
Okay, it's like, wow, where do I get some of that? That sounds sexy. I take the philosophy, it's good, it's all great. It makes it more interesting, but keep yourself at the beginning stages and even at the building your business stages on the fundamentals. Remember, I started when we were talking about the 80-20. 80% of your income can come from 20% of the stuff on WordPress. And throughout the design community tool set. And I even show people how to use free tools. So I tell people to abandon your Photoshop in favor of Pixlr, or abandon InDesign in favor of doing something online. Or I literally do a quick tip every day that's another free tool. And so it's same is true with these SAS and less and everything else with mix-ins. Yes, if you're an expert and you really want to squeeze a little more performance, you can do that, and then you can minimize your CSS and you can spit it back out through a CDN that yada, yada, yada. But boy, oh boy, if you're not a ballerina that can play guitar while dancing on top of a hot air balloon, this is going to blow your mind to try to do that stuff. So just stick with a child theme with a custom CSS file. How about just that? Because
properly annotated and with comments.
99.9% of your users will not leave you for the extra 1 second of time it takes. And for you to go back and edit raw CSS, even non-minimized, my goodness, of course, is so much easier than you're going to literally like reverse track some mix-ins and have to have your, compiler on your desktop. I mean, my goodness, nobody knows how to do that stuff.
Hey, just Jonathan, we have about 10 minutes left. And by the way, I use Genesis. Wow.
Yeah.
I want to just clarify the point because I don't want to be labeled a pariah here. Chris Pearson set the groundwork and I respect him because I had a similar feeling of being an outcast. When I had the controversy with the clients at Ning and I was outspoken against what I felt was wrong on their part, they made me a pariah. They shut down the company, but that led to good things. Chris had that thing with the open source where he got into a battle early on with Automatic and particularly even Matt. But ultimately, he stuck his ground and he built himself a great business that is a niche. Genesis does it differently. Neither one of them are doing anything wrong. I admire both of them. They're hugely successful. But I just feel that when people get confused about it's Betamax VHS, like I want to buy a bunch of videotapes, if you guys remember that far back, to put into my library. Do I have to buy 2 different tapes for every movie now? I mean, that's the problem of having a different system of building customization.
Well, I think it's just a difficult one because if you get used to the actions and filters of Genesis, and you read up the documentation, I've read a little bit of it, and like I say, I'm not a top PHP. I just done it because as a web design developer, you had to learn a bit more PHP. It's just, you just had to do it if you wanted to still make a living. So I looked at it and I thought to myself, I just don't really want to go down this route, and it wasn't in my heart. It's not because, but I think it's a fantastic framework, and I think if you want, there's a really respected design house in Sacramento that's about 3 hours drive from Reno, the Born Creative. They're well known. I don't know if you know them, but that they do a lot of outreach in the WordPress community, and both principals are totally built up their business based on doing Genesis custom design.
Yeah.
But it just isn't. I just can't do it. And so I think the other thing is, I think I want to ask you this question because I think you're going to like it, hopefully, and I think it'd be interesting. Is that I think a lot of also you get some clients that think they're going to go to Odec or Elancer and they're going to find somebody that's going to knock their website up for like $4 an hour, and it's a free enterprise society, and if they want to go and do that, they might be lucky. They might have a lucky experience. But I think if they're a small, medium business and they've got some realistic budget, they've got 2 choices, 2 wise choices. Either they go to a reasonably independent freelancer that lives in their city, in their area, that's got a couple of years under their belt and looks like they're going to still be there in 2 years' time. Or they should go to a small, medium agency, but accept that they're going to be charged a bit more because agencies got increased costs. But what the business owners should really think about is that if they get busy, they don't want to become a web designer, developer. They should concentrate on what's making them money. And I don't think a lot of people think that way. What's your reaction to what I've just said, Spence?
Well, the whole point is that it's this gigantic ecosystem. And what I teach in our 3-day boot camp is a lot of people get lost in design school or by advice they've read or heard that says, be like the old man in the sea, go out in your rowboat with a bottle of water and, a sandwich and then hope to catch this gigantic fish someday. And that's a mistake. We teach you, no, go find one little niche problem area in WordPress, and there's already a concentration of people. It could be very esoteric. I mean, it could be gravity forms or it could be BuddyPress. But pick that niche, and there's such a huge number of people, 79, 80 million people using WordPress, that you'll have an unlimited number of clients and income. But it's just not the nature of most people to think that way. I want to be the next Facebook. And they go out in their rowboat in the huge ocean, and they keep dropping the line and nothing bites. Versus going to the Fisherman's Dude Ranch where, there's 10,000 trout locked into a swimming pool that you could just drop a hook with no bait on it and they would have 10 fish fighting for it. That's the thing that I think most designers make a mistake on, is thinking I have to be some bigger, greater thing even from day one. And I teach them, no, let's work on you getting $300 this weekend doing something that sounds so ridiculously easy you're going to laugh about it, but that people are really ready to pay you money for today.
I obviously, I could probably learn something from your course myself, but I do recommend your course to people because I think I like your teaching. You keep it fun, but I've seen what you say and your skill level, and I think you teach things in a fun. And you've got the technical ability, but you don't go over the top, because there's some online training courses, and
no names, please.
No, I won't. But I think myself, you've lost me. You lost me in the first 10 minutes. God knows how somebody that's got no background in it at all, how they're going to cope with this. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. And you've never done that. You've always been consistently fun, but you put in enough content so people get value. So I do highly recommend your course to people.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And, I like to say that I'm like, I visualize myself as the Rosetta Stone between freelance people and customers, because ultimately, or even just between freelancers and developers, because ultimately I need for myself to learn how stuff works, and then I spit it back out in my own version of how I thought it worked, which in some cases can be more accessible or more fun. And I learned that from being in business with an incredibly talented technical partner in Widget Laboratory, who we had tons of fun on the side, but ultimately not everybody has that ability, right? You don't have a developer friend that you can just joke with and play games with all the time while you're making money. You have to decide, what do I need to actually start making money today? And I'm all by myself. And I try to be that guy like my partner was to me.
I just got one last question. Let's take a year's period, which is it's like a cat, isn't it? It's like 7 years of a cat's life. But this to take a year. What do you see the web? What do you foresee as maybe coming up in the next year that might affect web design, WordPress development in general in a year's time?
Unquestionably, it's the number of people that have yet to get internet devices will be getting internet devices. Usually they'll be in the mobile phone format. So they say there's something like 2.8 billion people right now who have access to the internet, and there's 7.5 billion people on the planet at the moment. So when you extrapolate that downwards, once you start putting Chromebooks and mobile text-capable devices in their hand, now somebody has to service those people that want to access this unbelievably large number of virgin potential customers, literally. And I think that's part of it, like we were just talking about earlier, when you have this wave of momentum and then something becomes a verb. The second part is in the WordPress thing. I think I see it like the Betamax VHS metaphor. At one point, Betamax lost and VHS won, and that was it. Blockbuster stopped if you guys remember that, stopped selling or renting anything other than VHS, and everybody was happy. And once this sort of idea that WordPress is this esoteric thing that you have to know about, and it becomes just mainstream, now everybody just knows, hey, I have a site, it's going to be on WordPress. Who's going to give me the tchotchkes that do what I want on WordPress ready to consume? So I think that diversifying into all these little niche solutions is going to be a way for freelancers to make money without arguing over, what's the theme framework and what's the plugin and what's the security. It's all going to be just figured out and unified so that you can focus on, okay, billions of people, here's the framework, everybody go and take a chair, figure out who's sitting in it. And that's it.
All right then, Spence. I really enjoyed the interview. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
It was lovely.
Oh, you're a character, Spence. I love you, mate.
Well, thank you, Spencer. Bill, too.
Oh, listen, Bill, it was great to talk to you guys.
Just one quick thing, Spence. I'm doing a startup. Is there any chance maybe next week I could show you it and get a little bit of feedback about it from you?
You can always send me an email. Just send it to spencerforman.com or help@labsecrets.com, one of those emails we talked about.
Yeah, I'll give him a compliment. His graphics aren't bad.
I just want to go through it, and I was looking at maybe hiring you for some consultancy. Are you still doing that?
I do selectively, but I always tell people, you've heard the training. I offer myself in either $75 per quarter hour, or some people take me for an afternoon or a day. As of late, I'm one of those guys that does what he preaches. So as my time has been taken up by, let's say, the success of more clients or customers at the 1WD-TV, I do it more selectively. But if it's interesting and you have a budget for a little time, absolutely.
So I'll email you, and maybe I can show you the product for 15 minutes, half hour, go through everything, and then we can discuss to see if we want to continue. How does that sound?
Sounds great. And your timing's perfect. I'm going to cut you guys off because my glass man...
he's arrived. All right,
saved by the glass guy.
All right, thanks, Spence.
Hey, thanks,
Cheers,
Spence.
guys. It's a pleasure. Send me a link with where this all be at. That'd be wonderful.
For those who would like to listen to more Spencer Forman, you can go over to timelinesofsuccess.com and listen to his timeline, which is episode 61.